How to avoid becoming a ghost. Introduction. What is it like to be a ghost? This is a question that plagues most minds of those that go into the field of parapsychology. Clearly there is ghosts, one cannot deny their existence. But what is happening to us when we die that makes us trapped here on the earth plane? This segment will aid you in not just finding out, but also very possibly a solution to avoid becoming a ghost. Who am I, you ask? I am an observer of the mysterious. I know for a fact that the remote viewing, astral projection, NDE, and many spiritual realms exist. In my current book, the Gnosis Gate book, I tackle what I call a esoteric self-help book, or what I like to call a handbook for a mystery school. I have dealt with symbology of society itself. People walk around seeing these strange symbols and wonder what it is all about. But the afterlife is a soft spot for me. I think we have a right to know what is going to happen to us beyond this life. It truly doesn't help having all these ghosts around. It is very unsettling to know that there is a very big possibility that you can end up this way. Many observers have noticed that. These ghosts are crying for help. What has happened to them? Why can't they pass on to the next world? In the Gnosis Gate book, I reveal that extreme NDE cases have revealed that it is the proper passage into the afterlife. What I didn't reveal at the time is that this theory had more to it. I realize just now that there may be an explanation of what happens in this process that can lead someone to become a ghost. This theory could very well be the eureka moment needed for those who are alive right now, so they too can know what to do when they are at the end of the road. My duty with this segment is to aid those who are alive to know possibly what to do and what not to do to become a stranded ghost. This process, I think, is very simple, but it is about controlling yourself in a very odd situation. The first part of this book deals with odd stories of the dead and shows that they are trapped. Recently, the death of Michael Jackson and the appearance on camera of his ghost is enough to show that this book is very necessary to the living. The afterlife process is detailed very well here, and it deals with a possible origin of how we pass over. To not cover how the Elohim, Hebrew for deities, made our path to enter the afterlife when we die would be a shame, to say the least. Many people believe in God, and the Elohim is the first appearance of the word we call God in the Hebrew Bible. The death process detailed in this segment should help those who are alive avoid becoming sad lost spirits in the gloomy night. Origins of the afterlife. In the early Sumerian tales, the afterlife was described as murky, muddy waters, and those that died in combat would experience less murky, muddy waters. The Sumerian afterlife involved a descent into a vile netherworld, to spend eternity in a wretched existence as a Giddim, which is a ghost. Another entity would follow the individual at all times. Much as we speak about spirit guides, the Babylonian belief system was the first to develop the idea of having a dread despair towards the unknown beyond this world. The Babylonians developed a system on sin and repentance that would be carried over to future religious belief systems. The Babylonian generally believed that at death, the disembodied spirit descends to the dark netherworld, and that human existence beyond the grave is at best only a dismal, wretched reflection of life on earth. Any hope of an eternal reward for the righteous and deserving was absent. Everyone was impartially consigned to the world below. It is not strange that the most popular dramatic and creative Babylonian literary work, the Gilgamesh epic, centers on a vain and pathetic quest for eternal life. The Canaanites' belief system was largely influenced by the Egyptian Mega dynasty. Their view of the afterlife process is seen in two views. One view is of dust and silence. The soul, Napshu, separates from the body, and the body goes back into the earth. A person's afterlife is in the memories of living. The other point of view is that when the Napshu separates from the body, it goes into the underworld. The Batu Kapathatu, the house of freedom. They had a lack of a belief in reincarnation. Though the reincarnation of Baal may have allowed such a belief to exist to a certain extent. The Egyptian system of the afterlife developed deep ingrained basis for future Christians. The afterlife was centered on the Book of the Dead. This book was vital for every Egyptian. You were to need to read it in order to pass the tests of the afterlife. And purchasing a book for yourself could cost a life savings. The entrance into the afterlife for you in the Egyptian belief system first had being attacked by spirits. With spells from the Book of the Dead, you can bypass this area. The next test is to be put under trial. The judges would accuse you of things that you did not do, and thus you would need to defend yourself. But if you did do one of these things, they accuse you of you could be in trouble. But the Book of the Dead would guide you through this test. The next test is to stand before Mot, a goddess of judgment, and your heart will be weighed against a feather. If your heart proved true, you would pass on into the afterlife. If you failed, then you would be consumed by the beast known as Amot. Interesting that the idea of heaven and hell would truly shape from Egypt and Babylon, and not so much from the Jews. The Greek afterlife system was based on the idea when the individual died, his psyche or soul left the body as a little puff of breath or wind. The individual could be heading to the underworld, which was a place of misery. If the individual lived a good life, they could be destined to the Elysian Fields, a place of bliss and peace. It is interesting in Wicca that they consider their afterlife Summerland, for it sounds identical as the Elysian Fields. Many depictions of heaven from NDE patients are of a field of beautiful green. In ancient China, they believed that when you died, you would continue to do the things you did in this life, and so they would put things in their tomb of their beloved so they could transition as easy as possible. The Chinese believed that their ancestors were with the gods in the spirit world, and if given proper tribute, the living could be given proper blessings. These tributes to those that have passed over could result in the dead bringing up certain protests and requests to the gods that the living may be blessed. Native Americans' afterlife consists of a realm right here on the mortal world. Their system is not far from the Chinese system. They have the idea of keeping strongly connected to those that have passed on, so that if the tribe needs help, the clearly departed may still have a part in helping the tribe out. Reincarnation or traveling to higher realms can result from one who has passed on. According to the Native American system of the afterlife, many old tribes carry this belief in this world. The Jewish system of belief in the afterlife is not greatly defined. Much detail is spent in their text towards life itself. Sheol is a place that is actually mentioned that it is described as a shadowy, dark place. The truth is that Sheol may only be another poetic way to describe the grave. The idea of being buried seems to come through quite strongly in any passage dealing with Sheol, though from another perspective it matches the extreme NDE perspective and my own strong theory of the actual entrance into the afterlife. The Jewish belief in hell developed from exposure to the Babylonian belief system. Gehenna, a true hell developed later, is actually a name of a place in Palestine, where massive amounts of garbage would be burned. Jesus would mention this burning place, and this would later develop the attributes of the Christian hell. The righteous would go on to Gan Eden, which is heaven to the Jews. At first, this paradise is about all things bliss, sex, drinking, and total hedonism, were what the Babylonian era Jews thought of Gan Eden. Later on, it was changed to be more like the Buddhist annihilation, which in this realm there is no material matter and only a spiritual constant static of joy. The Christian belief in the afterlife is an amalgamation of many religions of old. It combines the Egyptian, Canaanite, Hebrew, and Babylonian. The soul is judged by God, then sent to heaven or hell for all eternity. Over time, the Catholic Church added purgatory as a middle ground between heaven and hell, but purgatory would be exclusive to Catholic doctrine. For other churches sided with Martin Luther. that purgatory is not mentioned within the Bible. The Mormon belief in the afterlife is a bit different from normal Christian belief. It deals with three realms the soul can go to. The first is telestial kingdom. This is where criminals will go to that do amend for their evils. This is also considered a kingdom of glory, and has been described as being much better than earthly life. Those who do not qualify for a higher degree of glory will automatically enter this kingdom unless they deny the Holy Ghost, a sin it is believed very few people are able to commit. Next is the terrestrial kingdom. Those who do not follow the gospel in Christ is sent to this world. The kingdom is one of great glory, but without the presence of God the Father. An ultimate willingness to keep the law of carnal commandments, the 10 Commandments, is considered essential to enter this kingdom. The final kingdom is known as celestial, and is known as the highest world achievable for a soul. To Mormons, hell is known as the outer darkness, which is basically being exiled in darkness from the Creator. The Islamic belief in the afterlife follows very much the early Jews with Gan Eden, or the garden. Many slander Islam for their afterlife, when the fact is the Jewish interpretation of the afterlife at one point was basically identical. The garden, according to the Quran, is 7 heavens. Islam's hell is basically a carryover of Gehenna in the fiery pit. Gehenna, again, is the area in Palestine where trash was burned. But the place had such a nightmarish appearance, it rubbed off on what possible a negative afterlife could offer. Fire is also considered a purification, so many in the ancient world adopted the view of a fiery Gehenna quite easily. Another feature of the Islamic hell is the 7 levels of torture. One can see where Dante Alighieri came up with his tale and his structure of hell. It was borrowed from Islam. For Christians in the medieval ages, the biggest picture of the afterlife was not so much from the Bible, but from the poet named Dante Alighieri. What you must know about his prized trilogy is that it is a political commentary crossed with religious zeal. It is forged that hell was made of different layers, and each layer dealt with certain sinners of each group. After his journey to hell, he was taken to purgatory and then finally heaven. You must understand Dante's story had such a huge effect on Christians. They wished the book to become part of the Bible. The afterlife system for the Buddhists follows the idea of cycles of reincarnation, and eventually in time reaching nirvana. The Buddhist ideal to be beyond the mortal material flesh and to be like energy. Hindus as well believe in reincarnation cycle that will eventually lead to perfection. The creation of the spiritual highway. According to Genesis, Elohim, which means deities, made man in their image, in their likenesses. Also, the Elohim, according to Zechariah Sitchin, are connected to the older race of gods known as the Anunnaki of Samaria. In this small area between the rivers, Bashan, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, this is where the Garden of Eden was located. The garden was basically a walled-off environment to create this new version of man. No longer was man to be an ape, but to be like the gods to a watered-down extent. The gods came to this world for gold for their old world that needed the gold to coat their atmosphere. Their world could not survive being out of orbit or being too close to a star without a protective shield, and this gold was proven effective. Originally, the gods employed lesser gods to do the work for them. These gods were known as Igigi. But they grew tired of this labor and revolted. This revolt, according to Sumerian knowledge, could be the Sumerian backup story for the Book of Enoch. Or Enoch is retelling of how the gods came to this world. The gods under the command of Enlil and second command Enki knew they had to make a substitute. On our world back in those days were Neanderthal, an ape-like species. In Genesis, it speaks of the first creation. While it is possible this ape species evolved naturally, it's also possible that even these apes were made by the Master Elohim in one of their experiments. Though in the Book of Enoch, it describes a man being given gifts by the powerful angels. meaning man was tampered with by the gods. There is another story of creation within the Bible that very few, if any, know of, and that is the story of Jacob and Ishwa. In the story, Isaac, old and blind, wishes to hand over his riches to Ishwa, and not Jacob. Jacob comes up with a scheme of putting a calf skin on his arm to fool his father to think he is Ishwa. He fools Isaac, and now Jacob has Ishwa's birthright. Carla Turner years ago was having these visions that were haunting her. She was originally atheist, but was so terrified she decided to pray to God, and this is the dream she had. She saw in this dream the tale of Jacob and Ishwa being played over and over. A voice in this vision said to her, "Do you understand what this means?" She did not understand, but the vision told her that the story is symbolic for something very important. Ishwa is the original Neanderthal man. He is hairy, and his birthright is the natural ownership of this planet. Jacob represents this new human made by the Elohim. He was smooth-skinned, not hairy like the Neanderthal. Out of deception, the new man steals the Neanderthal's birthright to this planet. The story of Ishwa and Jacob may be a story of deception, but personally it was a necessary deception in order to advance the human race. The project was out of love, according to Lord Anke. If divine intervention was not done by the Elohim, man would still be trying to invent the wheel or thinking nature was the result of the spirits. It was decided upon that Lord Anke would create with his crew a human that could do the work and that the lesser gods did not want to do anymore. They took the Neanderthal and updated his DNA code. According to Genesis, there is a story about the sons of God making women give birth to giants. This story may actually be out of order, but may actually prove that these giants were originally human hybrids, that the gods were working on before they made us to their desires. What we have is species of powerful giants that are part animal but are also part God. These Nephilim are the closest to the Elohim's design. They would have the lifespan and powers to even cross into other dimensions while in the physical. The problem with these creatures is that while they were now very intelligent, they were still quite animal and they were too independent. They could not express love and could never be trained to be docile. These Nephilim, to be honest, are now what we call the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot is known to be able to vanish into thin air by many observers. No Bigfoot has ever been caught. They are too psychic to be caught and can cross dimensions with ease. With the failure of the first few breeds of humans, the Elohim finally found a DNA code that would make man into the image and likeness of them. But they watered down the code, so man would be only useful for work and would not have the power of the Elohim. Even today we can achieve some psychic power, but usually the power is best in large numbers. We never achieve the powers of the Elohim without DNA tampering. Scientists today are getting closer to certain mysteries in our DNA, but it will take many years just to know what to do to advance humans. The humans now made would do all the labor for gold and any other work that had to be done. The human designed to serve his or her gods to the fullest. Matthew Alper spoke about a god part of the brain that he discovered in his research. This proves that the Elohim designed us for the servitude and obedience to them. The Elohim created all things before us. They even created our afterlife. They were powerful enough to design the afterlife cycle for us. From beginning to end, they made it all. Many in alternative theories tried to paint the Elohim as bad guys, but the truth is, they are the gods. They made all we knew, and yet we would prefer a atheist experience, or a belief in just a force. The afterlife they designed is built to give us a testing place, a resting place, and finally a tube to send us back for another life. They designed also a method to graduate us to a higher existence for those that earn it. To earn this, we must abandon jealousy, envy, and unnatural hate. While this system works well, we are not being educated to understand it fully, and so while we are alive, we must master our lives, and once we do this, finally understand the truth. The death process in fine detail. Now that we are up to speed of our origins, we now understand how the gods made the circuit of the afterlife. This section of this book is the beef of the topic at hand, and will show all how we die and what we do to adjust to this transition. When the death process begins, you will see your life flash before you. It seems to be a universal truth that everyone sees a review of his or her entire life. Also, those beginning to pass may see disturbing truths about their world, and this can explain possibly the terror that they express while passing sometimes. The big problem with those dying that follows the current belief systems is that people dying are in fear of going to hell. This panic can screw up the death process terribly. The opening moments of death really depend on total calm for the person passing on. Now you're dead, and now you will find yourself outside of your body. With death, you will instantly experience a very real out-of-body. I have experienced what an out-of-body experience is really like. The astral realm is a lot more real than the living world. So when you leave your body, it will now see everything while floating above. The reason you can see everything around you is because the last of your nervous system is in its last stage before shutting down. You will begin to notice a black tunnel beginning to grow towards you. Everything around you begins to fade. Now your nervous system is shutting down and you're passing on to the other side. You will be surrounded in a place only described best by Aaron C. Hansen as the black. Here you have no body, and only have your memories and thoughts. This is where you judge yourself, and if you panic here, you will begin a cycle of self-abuse. You will then have energy haunt a specific area or areas that you reminisce the most. The idea is that you are not accepting death and are trying to remain alive. It is at best denial of death. Also, it is possible that your ghost is seen in these places. It does not guarantee that you can see where you are at, for you have no nervous system and should not be able to see. Ghostly activity seems to depend on how much energy they can accumulate for their spectral forms. And even with all this, it does not guarantee they can remain on the earth plane for very long. My suggestion is that they spend a certain amount of time in the black, then their presence is seen on the earth plane, for they are fighting to come back to this world. Then as their spectral form loses energy, they return to the black. The question is, can they experience the earth plane in this spectral form, just as we can walk around and experience it in the physical? It might be, but it may be possible that they can sort of see what they're doing from the black. Through trying to backtrack to old memories that are still fresh in their minds. As a result, a spectral form is created in an area where their memories are the strongest. This is the idea of hauntings being a VCR recording. Could come from that in fact the spirit cannot return to the earth plane at all, but it is a recording being made in certain locations by the fact that the spirit is reminiscing of such old locations. It is creating an imprint. The fact remains true. Ghosts do not have nervous systems, and so in premise they should not be able to talk or have anything to do with the living. Aaron C. Hansen also said that what we see is holograms coming from the brain. He was the first to mention about EVPs coming from the brain, or the Werner center of the brain. But the fact is, these hauntings do get quite physical at times, so one should understand that if these ghosts are not real entities, but holograms, one would still have to banish them if they become too annoying for the area of the brain that is broadcasting these entities. Must be told to stop through ritual. The key for getting through the black is to accept death, and it will be time to move on to the next stage of the afterlife. The black, according to many, is quite a loving, peaceful place. It is the in-between the earth plane and the light. When accepted, it is the most comforting thing imaginable. All your problems are now over. It is also possible to stay in the black as long as you wish, but for those that wish to move on, will begin to see a pinprick of light. The light will grow, and as soon you will be on the other side. From here it is a realm of theory of where you go. Belief systems may have a role in what you see, but there is bound to be many dimensions for you to go to. It may even be possible to reincarnate back to the earth plane, for there are many cases that have convincing proof about reincarnation. The entrance into heaven. In this search and finding some kind of preview, what we would find once a soul passes through the white light, we have to look to the odd methods that could give us an answer. But anything you must understand, there is no certainty that what I describe here is 100% reality. It is very possible what people in NDEs and hypnosis patients are experiencing is some sort of astral projection into their own consciousness. There is a theory primarily that came from psychic Aaron C. Hansen, and that because your nervous system is still functioning in a very small way, you're still plugged into the brain. And according to Aaron, the astral realms are only available to those with nervous systems. When we die officially, we're cut off from that. So this vision of heaven I am about to talk about might be an astral illusion, but I state this first part as a disclaimer. To find an alternative to classic NDE experience, we turn to hypnosis of patients that want to find what past lives they had. It was discovered by many. If you focus as they died in a past life, they could make the patient reveal what they saw when they passed over, and this what a collaboration of the cases show. Part 1. The entrance. When the subject enters heaven, they are greeted by all their loved ones, including their pets. Then they are taken to an orientation process to help them back over to the other side. If the subject is too traumatized from a really bad life, they can take him or her to the towers. Many mention that the soul will be put into a twilight sleep. This sleep could also explain the black. That in fact the black is not a purgatory, but a part of a process to heal through that is just a theory. The next step is to be taken to the orientation center to scan their lives. Though this process seems to happen upon death, this is most likely a longer process. From here the soul can stay in comfort in paradise or move forward into another incarnation. Part 2. Heaven. The main buildings in heaven or paradise consist of the Hall of Justice, where the Holy Council for God, or the gods, convenes. They make all the greater decisions in our lives and give advice in our journey. The Hall of Wisdom is the first building you will see. It is where you will sit in front of a scanner and see your entire life. The Hall of Records. This place a library of all things. You can read scrolls, but also merge with the scrolls and live the experiences like you're an actor. This is also an excellent way to find out what someone else's life was like versus yours at the time. You can live out a historical character's life if you wish, or live out a loved one's. When you merge with the scroll, you merely see through your eyes. You do not change their actions like a video game. It's purely sensory. If you wish to read the great works, especially works that do not exist anymore on the earth, you can do so. You can also listen to the scrolls like an audiobook. The towers are for psychological and emotional care in case of a traumatic death, and has left the person shocked. The Hall of Tones is a place of meditation where sacred tones are played through the place. Part 3. The layout of paradise. Paradise is laid out based on what planet you lived on and your spiritual level. The Earth's other side reflects Earth's geography from before man began tearing up the Earth. Each world has an other side, and when a world dies, its other side is merged with others in a massive cosmic other side. but on the Earth's other side, many famous buildings are there in their entirety. Part 4. Housing and Materialization. On the other side, we can materialize anything we wish, at will. That even includes houses as long as what you place does not damage any trees or plant life. Part 5. Visage. On the other side, you can choose to look like anyone you wish. You can be any gender you wish. Part 6. Projected thought. We can teleport at will by merely thinking of where we wish to be. This description of paradise is only a possibility. It is not set in stone. It may still be an astral realm, only available to the living. Though to be honest, once we pass through the white light, we can pass on to many dimensions. Adventures in dimensional realms. There are many alternative realms out there. One out there is named Hell. Yes, indeed Hell. It is a world of bluish light. The buildings are of Greco-Roman architecture. When I visited this world in an astral visit late at night, I saw a beautiful city. Though the city was covered in blue light, it was quite relaxing. It was not menacing, to say the least. It seemed to me that this is a way station for misguided souls that are about to go back into the womb for reincarnation. I remember a second trip to this amazing place where I was sitting in a bar with patrons smoking and drinking. This place offered them the same things they craved while being alive. Sadly, what they needed was wisdom, but they were still hooked to their chaotic ways. The ruler of the realm is unknown. The only real Lucifer was either Lord Anke or Marduk. It is also possible this is just another facet of paradise. The world could also represent Nibiru from a certain point of view. Maybe this is their other side. Maybe.